Hey you guys, and welcome to an unexpected, a somewhat surprise Mercury retrograde discussion video. This wasn't a video I had previously planned to do, but people seem to be getting a little freaked out, a little sketched out with this Mercury retrograde energy, and I thought this is the perfect one. This is the perfect Mercury retrograde to have like a real sit down reestablishment of what I feel Mercury retrograde is about. And of course, there's a lot of conflicting viewpoints on this particular transit. And so, of course, take what you want from this discussion. Some of you are going to feel this in different ways than others. Obviously, the degree and the intensity is going to be extremely specific, but today we're hanging out with very grounded Sarah. So this is not going to be one where we are going to be going into spinning out into these cosmic replays. This is going to be much more of a discussion of how we can take Mercury retrograde back, and also how we can contextualize it within our culture today. Because here's what's interesting about Mercury retrograde. Astrology has been through many different identities over the centuries, and Mercury retrograde is one of those transits that didn't actually have much pull before the last couple of 100 years, and it really gained importance and really gained attention in the 1970s when we started to have daily horoscopes, when we started to have these kind of check-in moments that were really enmeshed with our media culture and with our consumption of information and the speed with which we are starting to experience the consumption of information, right? And in some ways it's very mercurial, the way that we live in the world now. It's very quick. We get a lot of information at really quick speed, so it's no wonder that we have this kind of fixation on the Mercury retrograde transit. And I think that we've kind of learned to fear and be very superstitious about it, because we work in this really quick, busy work way that gets challenged by Mercury retrograde. And that was not always the case in other cultural paradigms. And so we have this lock-in with it. We're used to things going right. We're used to things going our way. We're used to being able to buy something online and have it show up at our door. We're used to being able to purchase a flight and show up and just get to where we're going. We are used to this quickness, right? And that's not always the way the world has worked. In fact, it's very new, the immediacy with which we get what we want. And it's all an illusion, really. We all get really hungry, and it feeds this hunger. So Mercury retrograde challenges all of that. It gets right in the face of that conversation and says, hey, what are you really doing there? What are you really doing there when you're wanting the immediacy? What are you doing there when you're pushing for things to work out your way? What are you doing with your time, with your energy, with your soul, with your resources, right? And that is where people get a little freaked out by the concept of Mercury retrograde, I think. Personal opinion there. But there is a cultural context for the obsession with Mercury retrograde. And I think it's really important to think about on the collective level why we have such a worry and a fascination with it, and why we're so afraid of slowing down, of being fatigued or tired, of things not going according to plan, and why we have such a fear and a need to control at such a deep level, and why this particular transit gets so much attention. I find that to be more revealing than the transit itself. But with that being said, all right, I'm looking at my notes here. Let's still enjoy this transit for what it is. It's personally affecting me. I'm kind of used to it because Mercury retrogrades have been happening in Leo. The last couple of birthdays I've had, in fact, have been Mercury retrograde in Leo. So I've been around this rodeo. Mercury retrograde began already on July 7th at 4 degrees of Leo, moving back toward Cancer. It will meet Cancer on July 19th. That's going to be, the days around July 19th are going to be quite powerful. On the 17th, of course, we have the Capricorn lunar eclipse, and then this Mercury retrograde moves into Cancer. There's that opposition, and then the Sun is going to conjunct Mercury in Cancer on the 21st. And then finally, at 23 degrees of Cancer, Mercury will go direct on July 31st. And then we'll have a post-shadow phase in August. So the first 2 or 3 weeks of August, you will be feeling that you're going forward, but you're going back through whatever you were integrating in July. So let's talk about what this specific Mercury retrograde is bringing us and how you can utilize this calmness, this quiet energy, this integration energy to its greatest potential. Because like I said, this transit challenges the hunger mindset. It challenges the busy work mindset. It challenges where we feel that we need to be actively pursuing things at all times, but in kind of a helpless, obsessive way. It challenges our obsessive mechanism in the brain. If you think about Mercury and you think about the signs it rules, which is Gemini and Virgo, these are very detail-oriented signs. These are very quick-moving energies that want to make things happen, right? And that can be a really positive thing. But the shadow side of that is that obsessive need to always be manufacturing, creating, making, doing, pushing. And Mercury retrograde gives us a release from that mindset. Now, if you've been in a very hungry state, you've been in a very busy work-minded state, you are hungry for a situation that's not working to your advantage, this Mercury retrograde will feel like a slap in the face because it's going to say that's not working for you. You can't move through the world like that anymore. You are going to have to reassess why it is that you're trying to make this work. So Mercury retrograde tends to kind of cause some distortion in spaces that aren't working in our lives. For the things that are working, for the things that are meant to come into our lives. This is a transit that will actually help you slow down enough to savor it, to get ready for it, to connect with it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to cut you off from your path, or that it's going to cause there to be problems in order to hurt you or harm you. In fact, this is the third time I have tried to work with the Mercury retrograde filming of this video, and it's because I had other things that I needed to take care of. And one of the times I tried to film this, I had this huge tea spill like everywhere and on cords and it was just this big sign to me to slow down and take my time getting ready with you guys and doing this video right? It wasn't a malicious moment for me. It was that reminder that it's not about making things fast and making things as high speed as possible so that we can get from point A to point B and say, here, ta-da, it's done. This is about quality over quantity. It's about savoring over speed. It's about paying attention to the details and paying attention to what's working and paying attention to what is not working. Now, the mechanism of Mercury retrograde, right, which is that integration energy, is that the things that aren't working, the things that are kind of, things that you're needing to adjust in life, things you're needing to connect with in life, and depending on your chart, depending on where you are in life, that can have to do with nutrition, it can have to do with energy, it can have to do with relationships, work, travel, lifestyle, life vision, life path. All of those things can be jostled up by a Mercury retrograde, but what you'll notice is in wherever it's hitting in your life, wherever there's something that's not working, this Mercury retrograde will isolate you from it. It will get in the way of things. It will stop you from having that full capacity to get into gear. That's what Mercury retrograde does. And for the things that are working, what it's going to do is it's going to have you slow down and be vulnerable. It's going to have you slow down and really open up your heart to that process and not be quick-paced and moving past it as quickly as possible, right? And the signs that this Mercury retrograde is going through is really important when it comes to the heart chakra and when it comes to vulnerability, because if there are two signs that know about like unconditional love and like deep committed loyalty and total vulnerability, it is Leo and Cancer. These signs are about the depth of love when it comes to family bonds, when you love your friends and you love your projects and you love your creative processes as family, as a part of your core being. And so when Mercury retrograde, the messenger, the quick, fast-paced communicator is going retrograde through these signs. He's saying, hey, we don't always have to be rushing to the conclusion, to the end of the story. We don't always have to be forcing these things to happen. Mercury understands, he retrogrades a few times a year. He understands that his forward motion is not the only way that we get information. It's not the only way that we move through processes. In fact, we deeply and desperately need slowdown and integration. We need times of deep savoring. We need times of deep healing. We need times of clicking in and being totally vulnerable and honest with what is working and with what is not. And the way that Mercury retrograde works is the more you're resisting it, a situation isn't working for you. You know that something's not making you happy. You know that scenario isn't playing out the way that feels good to you. And this Mercury retrograde is going to find ways to isolate you from that. Redirect your focus. Redirect your focus towards integration, healing, self-love, centering. And for those of you who are resisting it a little bit, that's going to feel a little painful. It's going to feel a little barbed. And the more you resist it, the more barbed it's going to feel. Now, for those of you who have been listening during this pre-shadow phase and moving into the actual retrograde itself and have been making adjustments accordingly with what is working for you and what is not, you'll be noticing this Mercury retrograde is not quite so severe. It is going to take you internal. It's going to take you into the home center. It's going to take you into the heart center. It's going to take you into those creative and loving spaces in yourself that aren't necessarily always about the external splashy display, but are about the creative process behind the scenes. And so yes, with a Mercury retrograde, it's not about the high-speed drama. It's not about pushing forward on projects. It's about sitting into the project, sitting into the love, sitting into the things that are working, right? It's ooey gooey like honey. And that is something that I think, once again, why are we so wrapped up in Mercury retrograde? Why is there such a huge stir up every time there's a Mercury retrograde? There's this weird cultural inherent fear that if we slow down, if we listen in, if we savor each second and we show up and we listen and we take our time and we mean what we say, like the 4 agreements, be impeccable with your word, that somehow the wrong things are going to happen. There's this fear of the slowdown. There's this fear of the quiet. We're addicted to our phones, to technology, to immediacy, to conclusions. And in other cultures and other times, that just was not something that people were so concerned with. And another thing to kind of keep in mind, as you pull into this energy, this slow savoring energy, is that this is a time to be fully open to the way you love and to the way you show up and to the way you feel connected to the process. Also keep in mind the number of things that go right every single day. If you get delayed on a flight, if a message isn't understood, for those things in life that are really meaningful, those little setbacks are not actually going to get in your way. They are reminders to slow down and pay attention. They are redirects to get you to look around you for a second, instead of being so fixated on getting to the conclusion, getting to the arrival, getting to the knowing. This is about not knowing everything and taking some time out to maybe be less focused on outcome and a little bit more focused on process. This is a transit that does not want to allow you to feed into the hunger, as I call it. The hunger, the craving, the obsession, the addiction. It doesn't want to take you there. It's going to find ways to rearrange it so that you can't go there. So yes, symptoms that can come with a Mercury retrograde can feel isolation. You can feel distanced or further away from things that you want and feel confused about what that's going to mean in a month or two. You can feel like maybe you can't see the big picture, right? You can't see how the project you're working on now is going to pan out 6 months from now, or that relationship or that travel or what have you, or that lifestyle is going to pan out 6 months from now. That's not necessarily the goal right now. So stop putting that pressure on yourself for 3 weeks out of the year. Maybe notice the details. Maybe notice where it's working, where it's pinging at you, and where it's not. Maybe take a breath, right? Because you're not supposed to see the big picture in July. Now, you could get some psychic downloads. You could get some very big visuals when it comes to that big picture, but it's the kind of big picture input that like you won't understand how you're going to get from point A to point Z. You know, you're gonna say, oh wow, I have this vision, I can see it, I can feel it, I can sense it, but I'm not sure how I'm gonna get from point A to point Z. So try not to get caught up in how you're gonna get that happening, right? Once again, you're not gonna get that information this month. It's just not a time for that. It's a time to be in the mystic. It's a time to be in the unknown. It's a time to be in the fog. And I'm very big on we are closest to the divine and to divine energy and to source when we aren't so certain about how the story is going to play out, when we're not so certain about who we think we're going to be in the storyline and how we think that storyline is going to play out. It's when we're uncertain, it's when we're fragile and broken open and taking our time and witnessing ourselves and witnessing our reactions to things that we are actually the closest we can be to divine energy. So this is stuff that you can apply to any and every Mercury retrograde. These ideas that I've just put forward are really important. And don't let this transit bully you into fear. You know, you're bigger than modern culture. You're bigger than technological culture. I mean, not to mention the fact that Uranus is in Taurus. So the way that we connect with revolution, technology, and innovation is going through a slower, more grounded, softer, more nurturing sign. And Mercury moving back into Cancer, also a more nurturing energy. You know, Cancer and Taurus are these divine feminine energies of like the most mystic feminine you can have. We're not being asked to move through kind of Martian dynamics right now, necessarily. We're going to get into Leo season and there's going to be a lot more of the flirting and the wildness, but right now it's about the deep mystical nurturing. So I think that's all I want to tell you about this Mercury retrograde. I hope that helps you guys put it into context a little bit if you are noticing that you're having delays or you're having a hard time finding the right words or you're having a hard time making those points connect. Don't worry so much. Don't let it sketch you out. Don't let it make you afraid that things are going wrong. It's just the mechanism at work right now. It's a very important time, and that's why we do it 3 or 4 times a year. It's just a part of life. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for sitting with grounded, businessy Sarah to talk about a transit that I think we need to reassess our obsession with and maybe just take a breath and remember that delays are reminders of what really matters in this life and what our hearts are really asking for. You can find me at SARAHTAROT.com, and you can also find me on Instagram at SarahVerba. I would love to see you guys there. Yes, I will be opening my calendar for sessions very, very soon, so if you're interested in that, you can email me. I'll leave all my info in the description box. I'm sending you guys so much love for the rest of this Mercury retrograde. Take it easy. Once August hits, you know, continue to integrate, continue to open up, continue to bloom like that beautiful flower you are, and you are going to be fantastic. I'll see you all very soon.